Welcome. Settle into a comfortable position, whether you're lying down or sitting up. If it feels right, gently close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath in. Feel your chest rise as your lungs fill. Then softly exhale, letting go of any tension you've been holding. Before we continue, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know where you're from and what time you're watching it. Always great to connect with you. Now, take another deep breath in and exhale slowly, releasing any lingering stress. Feel your shoulders relax, your jaw loosen, and the tension in your forehead fade away. With each breath, notice your body growing heavier, sinking deeper into relaxation. Let your mind drift freely, like a leaf floating on a calm, steady stream, carried effortlessly. Simply listen to the sound of my voice and allow yourself to be gently guided. The summer of 1987 was swelteringly unbearable in the small town of Eldridge, Maine. For four teenagers, Lila Harper, Ethan Caldwell, Mia Torres, and Caleb Nguyen was their last summer before college. A fleeting moment of freedom before the world demanded they grow up. They had signed up to be counselors at Camp Whispering Pines, a remote summer camp nestled deep in the dense forests of northern Maine. The camp had a reputation for being a rite of passage for Eldridge teens, but it also carried whispers of strange occurrences, tales of campers who vanished, of eerie noises in the night, and of a presence that lingered in the pines. The bus ride to the camp was long and bumpy, the old vehicle creaking along a winding dirt road that seemed to stretch endlessly into the wilderness. Lila, a sharp-witted girl with a penchant for horror novels, stared out the window, her reflection ghostly against the darkening forest. Ethan, the group's charismatic joker, was sprawled across two seats, cracking jokes to lighten the mood. Mia, quiet and observant, sketched in her notebook, her pencil capturing the twisted shapes of the trees outside. Caleb, the pragmatic one, was reading a worn copy of a survival guide, his brow furrowed as if preparing for more than just campfire songs. As the bus lurched to a stop, the driver, an old man with a weathered face, muttered, "Be careful out there, kids." The pines, they talk. The group exchanged uneasy glances but brushed it off as the ramblings of a local eccentric. They stepped off the bus, their sneakers crunching on the gravel, and were greeted by the camp director, Miss Evelyn Carver, a stern woman in her 50s with graying hair pulled into a tight bun. "Welcome to Camp Whispering Pines," Miss Carver said, her voice clipped. "You're here to ensure the campers have a safe and memorable summer. Follow the rules, and you'll be fine." She handed them a list of lines, which included odd instructions like, "Do not leave the campgrounds after dark," and "Avoid the old well near the northern boundary." The rules felt more like warnings than suggestions, but the group was too tired to dwell on them. The camp was a sprawling collection of rustic cabins, a mess hall, and a lake that shimmered under the fading sunlight. Towering pine trees surrounded the grounds, their needles rustling in the breeze, creating a soft, whispering sound that seemed to echo in the air. The counselors were assigned to Cabin 13, a weathered structure at the edge of the camp, farthest from the main buildings. It smelled of damp wood and mildew, and the windows rattled in their frames. That night, as they unpacked, Lila noticed a carving on her bunk. They watched from the trees. She traced the jagged letters with her finger, a chill running down her spine. "Probably just some kid messing around," Ethan said, peering over her shoulder. But his usual grin faltered, and the group fell silent, the whispering pines outside filling the void. The first official day of camp was a whirlwind of activity. The campers, a group of 30 kids aged 10 to 14, arrived in a chaotic flurry of laughter and shouting. The counselors threw themselves into their duties organizing games, teaching archery, and leading hikes. By evening, they were exhausted, but exhilarated, the strangeness of their arrival fading in the face of normalcy. After the campers were tucked into their cabins, the counselors gathered around a bonfire for orientation. Miss Carver joined them, her face illuminated by the flickering flames. "This camp has a long history. she began, her voice low. "It was built in 1923, and it's seen its share of incidents. Respect the land, and it will respect you." She didn't elaborate, but her eyes lingered on each of them, as if searching for something. As the fire crackled, Ethan leaned in, his voice teasing. "Come on, Miss Carver. You've got to give us the ghost stories. Every camp's got 'em." The other counselors chuckled. But Miss Carver's expression hardened. "There are no ghost stories here," she said sharply. "Just rules. Follow them." She stood abruptly and left, her footsteps fading into the night. Undeterred, Ethan launched into a dramatic retelling of a local legend he'd heard in Tona Tale about the Pine Watchers, spectral figures said to haunt the forest, luring people into the woods to never be seen again. Lila rolled her eyes, but couldn't shake the unease creeping into her chest. Mia, usually silent, spoke up. "I saw something today," she said quietly. "During the hike, a shadow in the trees. It moved. Wrong." "Probably just a deer," Caleb said, but his tone lacked conviction. The group fell quiet, the whispering pines seeming louder now, their rustling almost forming words. That night, Lila couldn't sleep. The air in cabin 13 felt heavy, oppressive. She lay in her bunk, listening to the others' breathing, when she heard a faint whisper, not from the trees but from inside the cabin. It was soft, almost inaudible, but it sounded like her name. She sat up, heart pounding, and scanned the darkness. Nothing, just the shadows of her friends' sleeping forms. She told herself it was her imagination, fueled by Ethan's stupid story. But sleep didn't come. The next morning, the camp buzzed with activity, but a strange tension hung in the air. During roll call, Miss Carver's face paled as she realized one camper, a shy 12-year-old named Tommy Ellis, was missing. His bunk was empty, his belongings untouched. The counselor searched the campgrounds, calling his name, but found no trace of him. The other campers whispered among themselves, their excitement turning to fear. Miss Carver organized a search party, pairing the counselors with experienced staff to comb the surrounding woods. Lila and Ethan were assigned to search the northern boundary, near the old well mentioned in the rules. The forest was dense, the pines so tall they blocked out the sun, casting the ground in perpetual shadow. The whispering sound was louder here, almost a chorus of voices, though no words were clear. As they approached the well, a crumbling stone structure overgrown with moss, Lila felt a wave of nausea. The air around it was cold, unnaturally so, and the whispering seemed to emanate from the well itself. Ethan, usually unflappable, looked uneasy. "This place gives me the creeps," he muttered. They peered into the well, its depths swallowed by darkness. Lila dropped a pebble, expecting to hear it hit water, but there was only silence. Then, faintly, a sound rose from the well, a low, guttural moan that made them stumble back. "We need to get out of here," Ethan said, grabbing her arm. As they hurried back to camp, Lila glanced over her shoulder and froze. In the distance, among the trees, a figure stood. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs unnaturally long. Its face was obscured, but she felt its gaze, cold and unyielding. She blinked, and it was gone. Back at camp, the search was called off as night fell. Tommy was still missing, and Miss Carver's composure was fraying. She gathered the counselors in the mess hall, her voice trembling. "Stay with the campers. Do not let them out of your sight. And whatever you do, do not go near the well." The next few days were a blur of fear and routine. The campers were kept busy with activities, but the counselors were on edge, jumping at every sound. Lila couldn't stop thinking about the figure in the woods. She confided in Mia, who admitted to seeing similar shadows, always at the edge of her vision. Caleb, ever the skeptic, insisted they were imagining things, but even he started checking the locks on cabin 13 obsessively. One night, Lila woke to find Mia sitting up in her bunk, staring at her arm. "Look," Mia whispered, holding out her wrist. Etched into her skin was a strange Symbiola circle with jagged lines radiating from it, like a twisted sun. It wasn't a cut or a burn. It looked as if it had been carved into her flesh without breaking the skin. I don't know how it got there, Mia said, her voice shaking. Lila's stomach churned. She checked her own arms, half expecting to find the same mark, but her skin was clear. Ethan and Caleb examined Mia's wrist, their faces pale. We need to tell Miss Carver, Caleb said, but Mia shook her head. She'll think I'm crazy. Or worse, she'll send me home and I don't think I'd make it out of the woods. Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fear. The next morning, another camper went missing. A girl named Sarah, who had been seen wandering near the northern boundary the previous day. The counselors were forbidden from joining the search this time, ordered to stay with the remaining campers. But Lila couldn't shake the feeling that the answers lay in the woods, near the well. That night, against Miss Carver's rules, the 4 counselors snuck out of cabin 13, armed with flashlights and a map of the campgrounds. The forest was eerily silent, the whispering pines now still, as if holding their breath. They reached the well, its presence looming in the darkness. Lila's flashlight beam caught something on the ground, a scrap of fabric from Tommy's shirt, stained with something dark. As they examined it, the moaning from the well returned, louder this time, accompanied by a rustling in the trees. Shadows moved at the edge of their vision, tall and thin, their limbs twisting unnaturally. Ethan's flashlight flickered, then died. Run, Caleb shouted. But before they could move, the whispering began again, now clear and unmistakable. Stay, the voices said, overlapping, insistent. Join us. Lila's legs felt heavy, her mind clouded. She saw Mia clutch her wrist, where the mark glowed faintly in the dark. Ethan grabbed Lila's hand, pulling her back, but Mia stood frozen, her eyes wide with terror. Caleb shook her, shouting her name, and the spell broke. They ran, the shadows pursuing, their whispers chasing them through the trees. Back at cabin 13, the counselors barricaded the door, their breaths ragged. Mia was shaking, her mark now painfully red, as if it were burning her from within. It's them, she whispered. The Pine Watchers. They're real. Lila's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the past week, the carvings, the missing campers, the well, the shadows. She remembered Miss Carver's words about respecting the land and realized the camp wasn't just haunted. It was claimed. The Pine Watchers weren't ghosts. They were something older, something tied to the forest itself. And the well was their gateway. We need to find out what Miss Carver knows, Lila said. She's hiding something. The next morning, they confronted Miss Carver in her office, demanding answers. At first, she refused to speak. But when Mia showed her the mark, Miss Carver's face crumpled. I tried to protect you, she said, her voice breaking. The camp was built on sacred land, a place where the veil between worlds is thin. The Watchers, they're guardians, but they're hungry. Every summer, they take what's owed. Owed? Ethan snapped. You mean kids? You let this happen? Miss Carver shook her head. I thought I could control it, keep them appeased with offering small things, tokens. But this year, they want more. They marked her. She looked at Mia, her eyes filled with pity. Lila felt a surge of anger. What do we do? How do we stop them? You can't, Miss Carver said. But you can survive. Stay away from the well, keep the campers close, and pray they're satisfied with what they've taken. As they left the office, Lila knew they couldn't just wait. The Watchers weren't done, and Mia's mark was proof they were targeted. The forest was alive, watching, waiting. And somewhere deep in the pines, the well whispered their names. The days following the confrontation with Miss Carver were a tense balancing act at Camp Whispering Pines. The counselors Lila Harper, Ethan Caldwell, Mia Torres, and Caleb Muen kept a vigilant watch over the remaining campers, their eyes darting to the tree line at every rustle. The air was thick with unspoken fear. The whispering pines now a constant reminder of the danger lurking beyond the camp's boundaries. Mia's mark, the eerie, sun-like symbol etched into her wrist, had faded slightly, but still pulsed with a faint, unnatural glow at night. She wore long sleeves to hide it, but the weight of it seemed to drain her, her once vibrant energy replaced by a haunted stillness. Miss Carver had doubled down on the camp's rules, enforcing a strict curfew and banning any activities near the northern boundary. The campers, sensing the shift in mood, grew restless, their whispers of monsters in the woods spreading like wildfire. Lila tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, leading sing-alongs and crafts, but her mind was elsewhere on the well, the Pine Watchers, and Miss Carver's chilling words. They take what's owed. One afternoon, while the campers were at the lake, the counselors huddled in cabin 13 to strategize. "We can't just wait for them to come for us," Lila said, her voice low. "Miss Carver's hiding more than she's telling. There has to be a way to stop this." Caleb, flipping through his survival guide as if it held answers to supernatural threats, shook his head. "She said they're guardians of some kind. Maybe they're tied to the land, like a curse. If we can figure out what they want, we might be able to break it." Under the cover of darkness, the counselors crept across the campgrounds, the moon casting long shadows through the pines. The whispering had returned, softer now, almost coaxing, as if the forest knew their plan. Miss Carver's office was in the main lodge, a squat building with peeling paint and a single locked door. Caleb, who had once picked a lock to sneak into his high school's gym, worked quickly with a paperclip, his hands steady despite the tension. Inside, the office was cluttered with files, maps, and faded photographs of past camp seasons. A musty smell hung in the air, mingling with the faint scent of pine. Lila rifled through a filing cabinet, her flashlight beam illuminating yellow documents. Most were mundane camp budgets. Camper rosters but one folder, labeled Incidents, caught her eye. She opened it, her breath catching. The folder contained reports dating back to the camp's founding in 1923, detailing disappearances, strange sightings, and unexplained injuries. A 1,947 entry described a counselor who vanished near the well, leaving behind only a carved symbol, same one on Mia's wrist. A 1,962 report mentioned a camper who returned from the woods, changed, speaking in a language no one understood before disappearing again. Each incident was tied to the northern boundary, the well, or the Pine Watchers. Ethan, looking over her shoulder, pointed to a handwritten note pinned to the back of the folder. It was in Miss Carver's neat script. "The debt must be paid. Blood for the land." Below it was a list of names, some crossed out, others circled. Tommy, Ellis, and Sarah, the missing campers, were among them. Mia's name was there too, underlined in red. "She knew," Lila whispered, anger rising. "She's been feeding them." Before they could process the discovery, Mia gasped, clutching her wrist. The mark was glowing brighter now, casting an eerie light across the room. "They're here," she said, her voice trembling. The whispering outside grew louder, no longer a murmur, but a chorus of voices, demanding, insistent. "Give, give, give." The windows rattled, and shadows moved beyond the glass-tall, thin figures with limbs that bent at impossible angles. Caleb shoved the folder into his backpack, and they bolted for the door, but the lock jammed. Ethan kicked at it, desperation fueling his strength until it gave way. They stumbled into the night, the shadows pursuing, their whispers now a deafening roar. The counselors sprinted toward cabin 13, the forest alive around them. The pines seemed to lean inward, their branches clawing at the air. Mia stumbled, her face pale, and Lila grabbed her arm, pulling her along. "Stay with us," she shouted. But Mia's eyes were distant, as if she were listening to something only she could hear. They reached the cabin and barricaded the door, their breaths ragged. Mia collapsed onto her bunk, her mark now a vivid red, the lines pulsing like veins. "It's calling me," she said, tears streaming down her face. "The well. It's hungry." Caleb pulled out the folder, spreading its contents on the floor. "There's got to be something here," he said, scanning the pages. He found a photocopy of an old journal entry, written by the camp's founder, Amos Eldridge, in 1923. It described a pact made with the Guardians of the Pines to ensure the camp's prosperity. The land demanded a sacrificial life, offered willingly or taken by force every decade. The well was the conduit, a gateway to the Watcher's realm. Amos had offered his own brother, believing it would end the debt, but the hunger persisted. "So Miss Carver's been keeping this going?" Ethan said, his voice shaking with rage. "Picking kids to die?" Lila nodded, her mind racing. But Mia's mark, it's different. They didn't just take her. They chose her. She looked at Mia, who was rocking back and forth, muttering under her breath. Mia, what are you saying? Mia's eyes snapped to hers, wide with fear. They want me to open it. The well. They say it's time. Before anyone could respond, a low moan echoed from outside. The same guttural sound they'd heard at the well. The door rattled, and the windows shook, the shadows pressing closer. Lila's flashlight flickered, casting wild beams across the room. Then, abruptly, the noise stopped. The silence was worse, heavy with anticipation. We can't stay here, Caleb said. They'll come for her, for all of us. Lila made a decision. We go to the well, not to give in, but to end this. If it's a gateway, maybe we can close it. Armed with flashlights, a crowbar from the maintenance shed, and the journal entry, the counselors ventured into the forest. The pines were silent, the air thick with an unnatural chill. Mia walked as if in a trance, her mark glowing brighter with every step. Lila held her hand, anchoring her, while Ethan and Caleb flanked them, their eyes scanning the darkness. The moss-covered well loomed before Lila and her friends, its depths whispering, "Open, feed, join." The journal hinted at a blood offering to appease the Watcher's defiance to break their cycle. "We destroy it," Lila said, gripping a crowbar. Caleb and Ethan pried at the stones while Mia trembled, her mark burning. Shadows emerged, tall, hollow-eyed figures, advancing as the well collapsed. Mia screamed, overcome. Lila sliced her palm, dripping blood into the ruins. "Take this! Not her!" The Watchers dissolved with a growl, the forest falling silent. Back at camp, Miss Carver warned, "The land remembers. The debt isn't paid." Later, a cryptic note arrived. Find the heart of the pines. Deeper in the woods, they uncovered a pulsing ancient tree, its roots carved with glowing symbols. As they struck its core, the forest fought back, demanding sacrifice. Together, they bled onto the stone, defying the pact. The tree shattered, the Watchers gone but. The land took something intangible, leaving them hollow. Years later, Lila returned, whispering to the wind. The debt was paid, but the pines never forgot.